Welcome to Musa Bytes. Here we make complex technology simple and accessible for everyone. Okay, let's dive right in because a recent report from MIT uncovers a pretty shocking reality behind all the generative AI hype. Despite a massive $30 to $40 billion in enterprise investment, a staggering 95% of companies are seeing absolutely no measurable return on their projects. And researchers are calling this the GenAI Divide. Think of it like this massive chasm. On one side, you have this tiny elite 5% of firms that are just crushing it, extracting millions in value. And on the other side, well, you've got the other 95%, and they're just stuck in what feels like an endless cycle of pilot projects that, frankly, go nowhere. So, how can companies actually cross this divide? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the problem. Then we'll diagnose why these pilots fail, learn from that successful 5%, find where the real ROI is hiding, and finally, we'll take a little peek into the future.
All right, first up, let's really get a handle on the scope of the problem. It's a classic story of high adoption, but surprisingly, very low transformation.
Now, this is interesting because it really visualizes what they're calling the pilot to production chasm. Just look at this drop-off. You've got 60% of companies that investigated specialized, task-specific AI tools. Okay, good start, but only 20% even made it to the pilot stage. And from there, a tiny 5% actually got these tools into production where they could make a real difference. And, this feeling on the ground, it's captured perfectly in this quote from a manufacturing COO. They point out this huge gap between all the buzz you see online and the day-to-day reality inside most businesses. They say nothing fundamental has shifted. Oof. So the big question is, why? Why is there such a massive gap between just looking into AI and actually implementing it? Well, the analysis points to a pretty fundamental flaw. The core issue is that most enterprise AI suffers from, well, you could call it digital amnesia. Unlike the really cool tools we use in our personal lives, these systems are often just static. They don't learn from user feedback, they don't remember context, and they sure don't adapt to how people actually do their jobs. And this creates a huge disconnect, right? Employees love using personal AI like ChatGPT because it's flexible, you can work with it, you can iterate. But then they get to work and they're handed these brittle, static systems that make the same mistakes over and over again. And that just completely erodes success. And this lack of trust, it leads to this fascinating shadow AI economy. As you can see here, while only 40% of companies have official subscriptions, a massive 90% of employees are using their own personal AI tools to get their jobs done. They know what good AI feels like, and they're just not getting it from the office. Okay, enough with the problems. How do companies get it right? Let's take a look at the winning playbook from that successful 5%. So the data here is, well, it's incredibly clear. Companies that choose to buy a solution by partnering with external vendors see a 66% success rate. That is double the success of those who try to build their own tools from scratch, who only succeed about a third of the time. And what are these successful buyers looking for? It's not about the flashiest tech or the best benchmark scores. Nope. The top criteria are things like the system's ability to improve over time, a deep understanding of their specific workflow, and simple trust in the vendor. They want a partner, not just a product. And this means the vendors who are actually winning have a very specific playbook. They don't try to solve everything at once. No, they focus on a narrow but high-value business problem. They integrate their tool deeply into the existing process, and most importantly, they build systems that are designed from the ground up to learn and get better. Following this playbook isn't just about successful implementation. It's about finding the money. And it turns out the successful companies are finding their return on investment in places most others aren't even looking. When you ask executives where they're spending their AI budgets, a whopping 70% of it is going to those highly visible front office functions like sales and marketing. And it makes sense, right? You're hoping for top-line growth, and the metrics are pretty easy to track. But here's the twist. The report found that the biggest and fastest returns, they're actually coming from the less glamorous back office. Automating tasks like document processing and risk checks is leading to massive savings. I mean, we're talking millions per year from eliminating business process outsourcing and drastically cutting agency spend. So if the key to success today is building systems that can learn, what does the future hold? Well, the report gives us a pretty fascinating glimpse.
The future isn't just about better chatbots. It's about what they're calling the agentic web. Imagine AI systems that aren't just responding to your prompts, but are autonomous agents that can actually act on your behalf. They could discover vendors, negotiate contracts, and coordinate with other AIs to run entire business processes, all without a human directly involved.
And that really leaves us with this final thought. The real race in AI isn't about having the biggest or best model. It's about having the smartest learning system, a system that can adapt, remember, and improve. The GenAI divide is real, but it's not permanent. The real question is, are organizations making the right choices to cross it?
That was today's Bite from Mosa Bites.